miles northeast. Turn left at 90. Maintain at 4,800 to establish an approach.
Here we go. Go. Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. All right, here we go. All right, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending March 11th, 2018. My name is Eric Stromquist, and this is episode 258 of Control Talk Now. And I am pleased to welcome to the show your co-host and mine, the man with the most, Kenny Smyers, the control man, paddle tennis playing man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, welcome to the show. Big dog.
Well, thank you, Eric. Warm reception is what I needed because, what I tell you, this weather is not letting up. We got 21 degrees and we had snow 4 days in a row. And you would think that Mother Nature would take it easy on us. She's beating us up real bad. And we got another bad week coming. So I don't know what your weather's down in Florida, but I see you wearing short sleeves and you look like you're sunburnt. So the heck's going on here?
Well, I tell you what, it's who knows, man. It was cold yesterday, but it's pretty warm out there today. So as soon as we get done with this, I'm going to take the family, and we're probably going to go out and take a walk someplace. So
great.
Evie G and Axel B.
How they doing?
Growing up. Well, Axel turns 3 March 31st.
Congratulations.
And Evie G is as sweet as she can be. So
you still singing those songs? I remember when I visited you, you had that nice little song about you tied them both together with
yeah. Well, we have a family theme song, man, and my kids love this.
Go for it. Let the Controltrends hear it.
It's Yellow Submarine by the Beatles.
Oh.
And so when we're in the car going any place or even around the house in the morning, we'll sing Yellow Submarine, and they march around and they sing in Axel, "We all lived in the Yellow Submarine."
That's cool. That's cool.
They love it. So that's our family theme song, Yellow Submarine. So, and those of you who know me, it probably makes sense to you that I would be living in a Yellow Submarine. So.
Yeah, I had dinner with my friend who's the Beatles aficionado. What's that called? Aficionado. Aficionado. There you go. That's our. I knew I was going to flub it up, but I knew you knew it, so I was giving you a chance to go.
You gave me a layup there, huh?
Yeah, right. So, but they did the. Well, I told you about the deconstruction of the Beatles,
yes.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, and when you get into the aspect of what the Beatles did, and I just love what we did back in Manchester. We went to Liverpool. We created a reach to talk about how smart buildings and how Scotland was a cradle of civilization and cradle of thought, modern thought, and then we went down to Liverpool and we were saying the Beatles did the same thing in music, and Easy I was doing the same thing in the industry. That there are no rules. I mean, they came in, they took some of everything, and they put it into the new sound, and the sound conquered, the music world. And it's still.
Well, I think they did. And Kenny, there's an underlying theme there too. And when we bring our guest on, we have a spectacular guest coming up here in a little bit. So please stay tuned for that. But I think what I learned from the deconstructing of the Beatles is behind every great artist or every great thing that we see is great technology and technology innovation. And as you told me, it was interesting because back in the day, they had basically 4 tracks they were able to record on. And George Martin, who is the Beatles engineer, I mean, he is every bit as responsible for the Beatles sound as the Beatles. It took a combination of both of them to do it. And what's interesting when you listen to this deconstructing the Beatles that Kenny talked about, you listen to the individual tracks and you kind of go, I could almost do that. But then the way it was broken down and deconstructed and put back together, which is the engineering, the software sort of behind the scene. It wasn't software back then. It was actually analog. you really get an appreciation behind every great thing that we see as great technology and great technicians.
I agree, and like you say, to the point coming up that there's so much heavy lifting that gets done, with nobody out of sight, out of mind, and like you said, the credit for being, for things being accomplished and done, and all those deliverables that hit on time, and all these projects that get started up. I mean, there's an army of very serious, capable, competent, dedicated people in the industry supporting the people that are always out front. So,
and on top of that, when you hear our guest we interviewed today, you realize that there are also people that come out of that legion of the Army, and they kind of go, we could do things differently, and they start to break the rules and think about things differently, and they deconstruct it, kind of like what George Martin did and the Beatles did with music, and they put it back together again, and that's where we get advancements and everything from our industry to all industries. And I think when we interview our guests this week, you're going to see that.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show.
But you got some shout outs, don't you, buddy?
I do, and I'm going to be tripping over names and words here today. So as I
love it when you trip over names and words.
You come back and help me.
One of my favorite things.
We have birthdays in the industry. A gentleman from Temperature Controls in Texas, Diambra Catarici. He had a birthday yesterday, and we say happy birthday. We also had Fred Gordy had a nice post that he shared, and he's getting ready to go down to the NFMT, National Facility Management. What's the T stand for there?
Technology meeting.
NFMT. I'm going to get another check. Okay, I got to go remedial Google here and get that. But it's in Baltimore, and it's a great meeting. And we met the people that run some of the marketing for them, and we were.
We did. That's right.
We were going to try not there once upon a time, but never happened.
Yeah.
We've got Maya Holzmeser. Nope. Holzmer. Maya Holzmer. Happy birthday. She's with ACI. And
happy birthday, Myra.
Right. And then we have Greg Galista. He was also on our congratulation list. We have Kenneth Tarver, 2 years at Air Performance, and one more. We have Craig Flatley. He's with Married Property, and he's celebrating his 1 year anniversary. So we got people from all over the industry, our Control Trends community. We really appreciate that, helping us keep things going and keep them growing. And we give you a chance to say hello and happy birthday and congratulations on your work anniversary.
Right. And I tell you what, if you got something going on and you want to get a shout out, or you know somebody that deserves a shout out, reach out to us. Kenny, why don't you give them that? Why don't we give them an email address that they can send that to, and we'll shout out to you on the show. Shout out.
We like you said, we did the. We made sure that we would not forget our sign-ons and not compete with anybody else for our Gmail addresses. And we're controltrendscontact@gmail.com. So it's controltrendscontact, all one long word there, at gmail.com.
Yeah, so if you know a shout out, or you want to be a guest on the show, or you want to communicate with us, that's a great way to do it. And Kenny and I probably even remember the password for it this time. I don't know. If not, we'll get Fred Gordy to hack it.
Yeah, that was a black guy there too, huh? I'm tone all this out, right? Bye.
The password thing, and I realize cybersecurity is important, but good God Almighty, the password thing. I have to change them all the time. I forget them, and then when you forget them, it's like a self-fulfilling sort of deal. You have to change them again, which means you forget them again.
Oh, it's
just like what's wrong with sysadmin? I mean, come on.
No, don't say that. Never use it, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Change those dang default passwords. But you're right. I just went through a series yesterday, and you can't write them down. Really, you're not supposed to. But and you don't put them in your iPhone because that's silly. That's a no. And they have to be 8 characters, alphanumeric characters with special, with punctuations and percentages and dollar signs, and it does get really, really hard. It's hard. It's hard because you need them for everything. Without the exaggeration, I counted them up. I had 54 passwords that were active doing something from Gmail, Facebook to Honeywell to Tritium, Niagara, and it goes on and on, and the banks and Oh boy. Well, but we had a solution that was common, and it kind of escaped us. And that was where they were going to use a combination of biometrics or a picture sequence where some of the neat stuff I see coming is you have to pick a sequence. I'll put like 9 things up, and you have to pick the sequence for your password. I think that was pretty cool.
Or the picture was kind of cool too, because you could take a picture, say like you and your family playing tennis or at the beach or something, and then you would just touch different parts of the sequence. Like you could touch your wife's face first or whatever, and then that would be something we could probably all remember. But anyway, Kenny, it's reach out if you got some shout outs or anything else you need to that address Kenny gave you. And we don't promise to get back to it, because if we can't get in, we're locked out, but we'll do the best we can. So, all right, buddy. Well, listen, we got a great guest coming up, like I mentioned before. So let's get to some of the posts we had this week so we can get our guest on.
Right. It was another quick, short week. Honeywell is making your hotel room smarter with the E7 smart thermostat. Honeywell Incom announced the release of a new thermostat. Meet the new Incom E7 thermostat, otherwise known as E7. Heralded as the first enterprise-grade environmental control and energy management solution that also features Amazon Alexa integration. And it's available in white or black onyx, and it's really slick. There's a hot button there. Go check it out. The whole concept that we've been talking about, the integration, the contextualization, going back to Tree Sullivan, where you come into the room and you say, turn on the heat, turn on the lights, turn on the TV, call the front desk, bring check the car out,
refresh the minibar, please.
So it's just, but it goes right into the details there, saying about the usability as the hotel standpoint is obviously important. The guest satisfaction ultimately remains at the top of the priority list, but you also want to have optimalities of every sort. So if the person's not in the room, shut everything down. Bring things to the fullest utilization of the data. So we're just basically, to your point, moving data. So the more we emit data, the better the response is going to be from the building space, and we're going to just eliminate all the barriers. And
I tell you what, I think the important thing to remember, I'm going to do a little commentary on Honeywell now, because I think the important thing about Honeywell is they have so many different divisions. Okay, so Encon was a company they bought years ago. We were hoping they were going to integrate it through our channel. Kenny and I are in the distribution channel where we sell the webs and the building automation controls and stuff like that. So, but it didn't come through our channel. So they've got a direct channel on that. I think much to the chagrin of people like us, and also the people that manage our channel. And it sort of goes, Kenny, you were showing me something the other day, because they have another division that they own that we have nothing to do with, called, was it ADI?
Yeah.
And you were showing me an article where they were selling the Nest thermostat through the Honeywell ADI store or something like that, which I know the people on our side of the house that we work with have to be just rolling around, because they've got the Lyric, which is an incredible thermostat.
It was extraordinary. I was shocked. We do.
It kind of makes you wonder, why wouldn't you promote your own thermostat? But I think that's almost different companies underneath one company. But
well, I think it's because the iOSs are driving a lot of the market. So if you have if you're into if your house is into this particular Samsung or Android or whatever it is, you got to sell the compatible parts to get more pieces inside the facility or house or residence. I remember when we first got started in the business, I remember going to the first marketing meeting, and I remember something that was very profound. And Honeywell guy said to the room, he goes, whatever it is, we want a Honeywell product in that house, whether it's a gas valve, a thermocouple, a thermostat, air humidity, air cleaner, whatever we need, and I just thought, is that brilliant? If you can't get all of it, get some of it, get one component in every house, and you're selling millions and millions of components, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And of course, Honeywell is such a prolific player and has been for so many years, and still are. I mean, they're the 9,000 pound gorilla. So, I mean, we could go on and on about all the great things that Honeywell's done and will do. But, Nest, I think if we had to give Nest a name, it's the thermostat you just couldn't kill. Because we tracked Nest when it first came out. We're going,
oh, sure,
wow,
lawsuits and everything, yeah.
Yeah, and they're still around. And not only that, it's not that they're competing with their enemy, they're co-competitioning with them, right? I mean, Nest and Honeywell are partnering now. How about
Well,
that?
yeah, I think that's it. I think it's our disruption. It's just another, very identifiable point where you see a strategy change. That you don't have to die on your sword. You can, if it's not working and you can't get your number one pick, you go with number two or plan B. And
Well,
so the
I'm
idea.
gonna tell you, I think we might have a nest killer though. We saw the Johnson glass stat, and we have a post on Control Trends that goes back a ways. We saw it at the AHR show, and that glass stat. Now they're teaming up with Microsoft, I believe, and that glass stat, that is pretty darn sexy. So that might
It's
outnest
remarkable.
the nest. Yeah.
And then I couldn't believe how strong it was. The testing that they did on it. I mean, it has like kind of the mounting is very interesting, and it has like a transparent, so you can make it any color you want, or it can have the transparency could be the wall behind
And
it or
so what
whatever.
I loved about it, I walked up to it because again, you can have it look at anything. I looked at it, it said thermostat on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
And what did it say, Eric?
Chris Eichmann.
Yeah, okay, there you go. All right.
Chris
Well,
is Chris is
speaking of that, what a segue! What a great opportunity to dance into the next subject, which is Acuity Brands. Distech Controls appoints Scott Hamilton as Vice President of Sales.
Congratulations.
You talk about cannon fire, at the dismay and chagrin, using that word again, of Siemens.
You like that vocab word, huh? Chagrin. I think that's the first time it's been used on the show. Chagrin.
Nice, man. I mean, it was seamless. I mean, it was no difficulty at all. It just came in, flowed. But anyhow, Scott Hamilton joins Distech Controls in the role of Vice President Sales. He's got more than 20 years of industry experience. Scott will be responsible for the sales channels across the Americas, Australia, and Asia, as well as the organization's OEM. I'm sorry, that was yeah, that's right. That's a lot of work there. The Americas, Australia, Asia, and the organization's OEM channel, and Distech Controls Energy Services. Well, he's going to have to put in 14-hour days there.
Well,
So those guys
I'm going to tell you something. So if you're looking for Scott Hamilton, just go to the airport. He's probably changing planes someplace.
anyhow, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. Tell because we both got to know him a little bit at some of these Siemens meetings. Tell us your take on Scott Hamilton because he's a cool dude.
Well, he was the one that really brought some attention to Siemens when he was he served as the head of the automation channels at Siemens Building Technologies. He was responsible for sales, operations, and business development, systems integrator, reseller, and OEM channels, and he knew his stuff because he came from the electrical side and was in the industrial, the hard, really the big stuff. And then he came into our channel, which was more, I think more, not as, aggressive and not as multi-billion-dollar projects. These were, million-dollar projects and controls. And he took the lines and he took youthful approaches and made a softer side of Siemens. So I'm sure he's going to do good things at this tech.
Youthful?
Yeah.
Approaches. That's a great phrase, and youthful and softer in the same phrase. Kenny, you are turning some phrases today.
Well, I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Those of you who don't know, Kenny is also. I'm going to tell him right now, Kenny. He's a writer. Kenny is just an unbelievably great writer. One day you're going to go to your look at the New York Times bestseller, and you're going to see Ken Smyers.
That's right.
Deconstructing controls.
Well, and like Elfer said too. I mean, flattery is always great. It makes you feel good for a couple of seconds, and then you go back to the real world. And anyhow, the interesting thing to complete that thought, the useful methodologies was the biggest trend that we had at one time was the white hairs. When we had guys like Paul Oswald tell us about the gray hairs leaving the building, and Ken St. Clair was tracking about what are we going to do. A lot of industry knowledge is leaving the industry, and there's no replacement. And then you see different organizations. You see certain corporations where everybody in the room is very well seasoned, in the autumns of their careers. And then you see another corporation where everybody in the room seems to be under 40, and you have a whole different pulse. You have a whole different, the way the wave, the expectations change. Everything is all about, the implementation of new technologies and stuff. And you've got to have that right balance, so it's very difficult.
I think you're right about that. When I was a young guy and I first came in the industry, I had a mantra because, part of being older is you have what we call sacred cows, right? Things that this is the way we've always done it. And when I was a young guy and came in the industry, and it almost got me kicked out of the industry, my statement was, if you see a sacred cow, make hamburgers.
Yeah, that's not. That's hey. Enroll this Mr. Eric Stromquist in the next sensitivity class.
There you go. I got it. Yeah.
Google enroll Eric in sensitivity
Yeah.
class.
Politically incorrect. All right, buddy. So then,
No,
hey, but Scott Hamilton, good luck to you. Great guy, and it'd be interesting to see what he does at Distech. I think it's a good hire for those guys. And we're talking big threes here. We got JCI coming up next, and their Verisys. They're taking the Verisys to you. So, Kenny, tell me what Verisys is and why you should care.
well, that race to the small space that we just won't ever let go until we get more traction. Johnson Controls has announced the Verisys turning up the Smartt Roadshow, and it's literally going to be taking the featured Verisys product line, which is a new kind of plug and play building control system with less complexity and more capabilities to expand your business and service opportunities for your customers. The best way to appreciate this system is by seeing it in action. And so Johnson's taken the mountain to the people, and it's a cross whirlwind tour across the United States. And I mean literally. So it's going to be engaging presentations, live hands-on demonstrations, and the insider's look at Verisys. So you can register online. We have a hot button there, but the areas are the first release: Chicago, Atlanta, then Houston, then Dallas, then Orlando, then Jacksonville, and how'd you like to be on that team? I wonder if they got a tour bus like the rock stars, and you got roadies. We had an interesting experience with Roger Revenak back when he was with Honeywell, and we'd go to the races, and they rented Tom Petty. Tom Petty sold his bus to a company, and we were fortunate to have that experience. But those tour buses are extraordinary. When you see them on the highway, they're having a full-fledged party. They're probably having a sit-down dinner in there. They probably got somebody who's working in the studio on the next song or whatever. But the minions, the stage crew, sleeps in these little beds that fold out like you see in the Japanese movies in the hotels, where the bed rolls out. It's like a casket. You get in it, then you have a rail to pull yourself into it, and then you have a curtain to pull, and that's where you sleep. So, and there was I think there was six. There was three on each side, and I'll tell you what. I slept in one of them because the noise was just too much, and I called it a night. But I slept very well. But when I woke up, it was kind of spooky. It was like,
I got you.
I'm laying on this.
There was an awesome series on Showtime called Roadies, which was it was a Cameron Crowe thing. Very, very good. And you see the buses, you see how they were living and stuff like that. But cycling back around to Verisys, Kenny, where I think they really play. We interviewed Kevin Fasinelli and the folks at Daikin 4 or 5 years ago, and they had just sort of introduced their embedded control system, if you will, that was configurable. And the Verisys, among other things, is embedded in their York equipment. So if you get York equipment rooftop units, it's embedded in there. So you basically can just configure it remotely. So it's kind of right there. It also is a retrofit as well. So you can go retrofit to existing stuff or other people's stuff, or you can just get it all embedded in your York equipment. So it's cool stuff. Definitely check that out. And we will look forward to seeing you in Atlanta anyway. And talking about seeing stuff, Kenny, we got our extended version. It's kind of like, Apocalypse Now was one of my favorite movies, right? And they had Apocalypse Now, the extended version with previously deleted scenes. So we actually posted our extended version of the highlights of the 2017 Controltrends Awards, and it's great to see. It's a bit longer, but everybody gets their moment in the spotlight, so to speak.
You should run that. Put that on real quick. I mean, if you can. Right, the reason why is it is a who's who of the industry, and Vlad Chalupka, our videographer, is a professional out of New Mexico, and it has like a unique capture of our industry. It probably has 250 faces because he does a great job of doing panoramic shots and up close and distance. But I'm looking at the very front of it, and we see all the tables full of the executives, men and women that run our industry, having a good time in the same venue. In other words, there's nobody, there's no animosity there. They're all smiling. They're all having the conversations across lines. So, get Siemens sitting next to Johnson, sitting next to Honeywell, sitting next to Tritium. I mean, and these are really true. I'd hate to make that payroll. I mean, you think about the money that you got to make every 2 weeks. That crowd, holy moly! But it was just a great time, and Vlad did a great job. And the venue, for all its deficits, was a magnificent place to have our show. The acoustics and the sound could have been better. However, the ambience couldn't have been better. And
Right.
these Hard Rock cafes with this museum-like qualities that they have, I can never stop looking at cool stuff, and like the guitar that so-and-so played, Jimi Hendrix played, here in Woodstock or whatever, I mean, just there's something magical and magnetic to artifacts.
I think to your point, I think the reason that the Controltrends works well with the Hard Rock is the Hard Rock is about remembering, and so is Controltrends, remembering and acknowledging. They do it through paraphernalia and music. We do it through awards. So it was a great show. Again, thanks to all our sponsors. If you go to Controltrends, I mean, we've actually got the complete show up there where you can watch from start to finish. We got the another highlight reel, and this one is sort of a good in-between point. So, well, Kenny, listen, our guest is almost ready. So let's get our last post that Therese Sullivan had and talk about that, and let's bring our guest on.
Okay, well, this is a kind of a repurposing post of shaking the value chains and channeling new voices in BAS. Therese Sullivan's a principal and contributing editor. She's a principal of Building Context Limited and also a contributing editor to Automated Buildings. And Therese has, really got a different perspective on our industry, and she's fallen it real from the high tech stuff. So she says, what are the 15 plus IoT partner value chains trying to conjure up? They want Cortana, Alexa, or Siri in our walls telling us everything that needs attention in our buildings. So again, Therese was kind of the voice that did the definitions, the connotative definitions of what contextualization was going to do in HVAC. And I remember how it's just, she predicted certain things were going to happen, and now we're actually, that's the surface of our industry. Those are the trends we're doing. But it goes into she captures different voices in our industry, and then she synthesizes all that into a conclusion. But she talks about meeting with Brad Kalt, the Associate Vice President, Director of Technology and Design with HD Architects, who we had
he was on last week.
And then she fuses his intellect, his comments and about his how analytics and building applications and the edge controllers, analytics moved into cameras and access control devices. So it shows you, the interior of a building, how it's all got different networks right now, and how they have different data, pushing data this way and that way and crossways, and not intersecting them, or not having a common, collection point into what we've heard here recently. It's all about making the data. The term I really got a kick out of was there's a term using data sent to the cloud, but it still has become, so data is still getting sent to the cloud, and as we talked about edge devices and whatever, and we will be more, it still has to be optimized. Optimizing data is the next, as we see trends and we know analytics are not going to go away, this ability to optimize data within a building and different sets of data. And
right.
So it's
well, you know what they say, Kenny, man, there's gold in that there data. So
exactly.
we're kind of at the data gold rush phase here. So it's going to be interesting. And Therese is interesting to me, Kenny, because she is sort of outside the looking glass. We're all inside, and she's got to look from a perspective from outside. So definitely check her out, buildingcontext.me. She has some great perspectives and some great insights. And speaking of brilliant, let's introduce our guest this week.
Thank you, Eric. We have one of the, again, a stalwart in the industry, a young gun from the past who's been on our show many times and is bringing new dimensions and new technologies into our industry. So we'd like to introduce the Managing Director of BASSG, Alper Olsmeister.
Alper, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you.
Alper, how did I do on your name? Did I get it better this time, or am I still?
It's getting better. I'm not worried about the spelling.
Mesler, Alper Olsmeister. I tried.
Yes, that's great.
To me, he'll just always be the young gun that came into the industry and is changing things. And Alper, for our listeners who might not know what your company does, how about giving us an overview of what you guys do?
So at BASSG, we are a distributor of SkySpark, as well as an OEM of Tritium. And we write software in SkySpark and in Tritium, and we create value-added applications.
So why would people need that, Alper? I mean, you just figure, why don't you just get set up with SkySpark Direct, or if you're a Tritium person, why would they need some company like yours to do this for them?
There needs within every framework. Overall, we try to close the deficiencies with feature sets that are not already in the applications. Also, we'd like to deep dive into the application, get into Java and Phantom, and help customers with writing either drivers or connectors or other things. So that's where we stand.
Well, and I tell you what, I sort of asked that question a bit facetiously because, you know, a lot of this stuff sounds easy in theory, and especially when you're working with the analytics or SkySpark. I mean, it's one of those things, if you're kind of not doing it on an everyday basis,
Mhm.
just to ramp back up and get back where you can start doing stuff, you know, takes a lot of time and energy. So
Mhm.
we're seeing one of the trends Kenny and I've been seeing is a real need for either systems integrators, if that's all they specialize in, and they work with other integrators just to do that piece, or companies like yourself that sort of
Mhm.
do the heavy lifting behind the scenes and make it easy. But, you know, the apps and stuff like that you're talking about seem like a key piece.
That is correct. And the way I see the industry is almost like a pole race between different vendors, different companies, and we try to make it easier for that pole race to happen as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit like I can give somebody a box of paints, all kinds of different colors and stuff like that, and they can put some stuff on canvas, and it probably won't look that good. Or we could just hire like a Picasso or something like that to take those paints and paint the painting. That's kind of what you are, like the Picasso of the industry.
Picasso might be a little bit on the higher end, but
All right,
we
Rubens, or
try
somebody like
to
that. You're more traditional, right?
we try to create nice screens and thoughtful screens, but yeah.
Well, but I've sent some of our customers your way for that exact reason. When they needed some graphics done, and they needed, like an ace or a relief pitcher come in and put graphics out there quickly and professionally. But
Mhm.
you're working on some more. I mean, you've really grown. We've known you now probably 6, 7 years, and we've
Mhm.
watched BASSG start from kind of a smaller solution set of for the industry, but now you're really into the big. You're making the mechanical stuff look easy, but you're into this. Tell us about your latest effort and project at Sandstar. Tell us about Sandstar.
Yeah, Sandstar is an open source project that we announced last year at the Realcomm. Actually, you did a video on that. It basically marries Sedona with Haystack in a seamless whole, and it, it, it it's basically almost like when you get two different flavors, you combine it, a new flavor, a new attribute comes out of it. When we merge the two applications, there are new benefits that came out, like portable DDC code between manufacturers, metamorphism in the programming. That's a term that we came out with, metamorphing based on tags.
Cool.
And we will be able to demo it. So
Well, hang on real quick, Albert. Just for somebody, I mean, most people in our community know what Haystack is and Sedona is, but we get new listeners every single week. If you don't mind, just break down real quick what Haystack is and why it's important, and the same thing with Sedona, and then from there, I think we can continue the conversation.
absolutely. Haystack is a taxonomy, just like the browsers have HTML that everyone agrees on, and the browsers render pages based on that. This is Haystack is for the Internet of Things, so that we would agree on the points that are on the systems. That way, the value-added applications are automatically generated once all the consortiums and companies who adhere to the Haystack definitions. We don't have to do integration.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's really the big piece. When people are Haystack compliant, you're agreeing upon what you're going to call things and how you're going to tag them, right?
that is correct.
So for an end user or a consulting engineer who's trying to save their clients money, or even for an integrator that's trying to be more competitive, it tremendously reduces the time to implement and get things from point A to point B, to the point where before you'd have to, we used to call them link monkeys, where you would basically have to manually link this point to this point to this point to this point, which is very, very time consuming, very, very costly. But by using Haystack, completely eliminates that and allows somebody like your overlay to come in on top of it and be almost seamless.
That is correct. And the value generation comes from the repetitive tasks that we have to do, either mapping a point to a graphic or mapping a point to another point. Those things are completely eliminated by utilizing Haystack.
You know, Albert, I do remember that interview. In fact, you took the time and the trouble to draw the information out on a napkin, which I still have. We were eating lunch, and you were telling me how you fused the Haystack and Sedona together. And I know we're going to see a demo, but on your website, it's a great website, bassg.com. And, you know, just as a review, you guys do hardware, software, you do energy analytics and advanced visualization. I know personally your advanced visualization. Tell us a little bit about that Visualytic.
Hang on real quick. Albert, I definitely want you to do that, but sort of completing the second part of my question just a second ago, because again, I want to get stable data for the Control Trends Committee. Tell them about what Sedona is and why that's important. And then once we do that, then we can go, because these pieces connect.
That is correct.
We'll talk about next. So Sedona is a very important aspect too, and mainly because it's free, right?
Yeah, Sedona is an open source platform. It's a framework. It's actually has its own language. It has its own virtual machine, just like Java has. And it was written to be installed on small embedded CPUs with very small footprint. It's a proven technology. It's utilized by 8 different companies throughout the universe, and it is the best and probably the only direct digital control engine that is suitable for building automation. And it's extensible. Meaning that just like Java is extensible with jar files, Sedona is extensible with kits. It has its services and platform level integration. So it's a great language. It's a great framework to write. And overall, it's open source. It's academic license.
And the same parents, right? I mean, the team that wrote, Brian, I think it was Brian Frank and his brother and his dad, the team that wrote Tritium or the Niagara framework also wrote Sedona. Is that accurate? So they're it's the little brother, little sister of what they're used to, right?
That is true. Brian Frank wrote it. He's the master genius mind in our industry. And he wrote it, and I'm glad to be in very lucky to be in the world at the same era as Brian Frank, right. And follow in his footsteps.
So if you can program in Tritium or Niagara, then you can. It's the same. Pretty much, you can do Sedona. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Very
correct. Okay, Kenny, bat the ball to you. We got stable datum now.
Right. Well, that's a very good comment about Sedona. It was basically developed by Tritium for smaller applications and let third parties get involved in the applications for Tritium, wasn't it? So I know at the very beginning you got involved. Contemporary Controls adopted Sedona. EasyIO adopted Sedona, and a few other big companies really took it serious, and it took a huge start in the market, and it was kind of orphaned by Niagara, and then you guys kept it going, and now it still turns out to be a very formidable program.
There are companies like Ontrol, Sysmic, which is Phoenix Contacts.
Right.
There's a couple of them are in East Asia, and there's overall 7 or 8 companies.
Great. We're trying to really get the Control Trends community more to understand what you do as a company. So I wanted to just review again. We're on your website. We're looking at bassg.com. You have hardware, software. You have energy analytics and advanced visualization. Now, I personally am familiar with your BAS graphics. Tell us a little bit about your visual tech.
Visualytic. Visualytic stands for Visual Analytics. When we started doing SkySpark Analytics, They're in the industry, overall outside of our industry, there's dashboarding tools that are open source. There is one called Plotly.js. Anyone can go there, Plotly.js. You can download the library. These guys basically open sourced it to the community, and it's being used by outside of the BAS world, from oil and gas to big energy. And we also needed a way for the edge analytics controllers, which we formed a company called Anka Labs, which is also open sourcing the SandStar. We found a need of merging Haystack with a graphic tool. Basically, if you look at Haystack, Haystack can be used as like a driver for mapping points, but it can be also for a DDC. It can also map to a graphic tool. And we saw a need of creating a dashboarding tool that is tightly knit with Haystack. And that's why we created Visualitic. And we are in 2.5 years in development. It's complete. We have many nice features within it.
Cool, great, good stuff.
Is that something you can show us easily, Alper? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. We could do a demo of it as well.
Well, because I definitely want to get to the SandStar, so we got a finite amount of time here. But before we do that, while we think about that, and again for stable datum for our industry, you use the term edge control, which we're seeing it. You were one of the first people that I knew that came out with that control. I think you and Linkspring about the same time came up with an edge control. What makes an edge control different than a regular controller, and why is that important?
Edge controllers, I think, are a new type of controller. The old, the regular DDC controllers are created with, they have microcontrollers. And the new era of controllers are going to have microprocessors. And this basically came out to fruition of the makers community standardizing on embedded hardware, just like the PC industry, when the PC industry came around. And then Microsoft came out and Linux came out. We are seeing the same things happening on the embedded level. And the edge controllers are going to be essentially combined of the features of gateways and controllers together. It creates its own complexities. It creates its own things, and these are the things that we are trying to solve within the Anka Labs company.
So, as part of it, because we hear about the cloud, right? About pushing data up to the cloud and then pushing it back down and pushing it up and pushing it back down. Now, my understanding, and please correct me if I got this wrong, is that can be expensive, and you can also lose connection. And so is part of what an edge controller does processing of data at the edge versus going to the cloud, which saves the expense of pushing it up and down, and then also the vulnerability of maybe losing your connection.
That is correct. And you would, it also adds to new feature sets. And there's a new terminology too called fog computing. Just like cloud computing, there's a fog computing towards the edge. And the sensors and the controllers and the cameras will eventually be talking to each other, which will create a fog network. Within that time, we will still send data to cloud, but the data will be optimized, not the full data.
So is this being adopted readily by, when you're looking at specifications and stuff like that, and I'm thinking specifically about our end users and our consulting engineers that sort of listen to the show. Has it been adapted? In other words, does everybody have these controllers, or does some has to be written in the specification? If you're an owner, do you need to push back to your consulting engineer and say, hey, I want to make sure that our controllers are edge capable? Same thing with the consulting engineers, or is it still in its infancy?
It is. It's infancy, and we did a pilot where we monitored air compressors for a university, it came out to be edge devices would be a lot cost effective of doing it rather than using gateways. We're talking only 1 or 2 points per device and trending that device and sending it out to the cloud. It is at its infancy for sure. This is why we are open sourcing the SenseStar in order to get the market to understand the benefit of edge analytics controllers and
so you could use this with could you use this with an existing system? Let's say I've got a legacy Honeywell, Johnson, Siemens, you pick your brand that's in there, but now I want to start doing some analytics on my chillers or my compressors. Could you use your edge controllers in conjunction, like as a retrofit, or would there be a standalone system?
We do envision, this is a prototype. This is not complete, by the way. This is one of the version 2 edge analytics controllers. And we have an RS-45 where we could create BACnet and bring the data for an air handling unit. So you could control an air handling unit with analytics, with historical data in it. You can link the analytics results to DDC. That's one part of the goal of SenseStar. So that would be the retrofit scenario where people would be using an edge analytics controller for a transition time.
Well, so with the edge too, because Kenny and I've had some people on talking about artificial intelligence coming into the building, automation controllers and stuff like that. So by having an edge type controller that can take the data, do the processing, I mean, is that sort of a stepping stone to having a truly smart controller that has artificial intelligence in it, where at the edge it can troubleshoot itself, do all kinds of crazy things? Is that?
I completely agree on that. I think the limitation right now is not the hardware; it's more of the software and mapping the data for artificial intelligence to understand what the system has and be able to make the corrective changes to the DDC code. There's no open DDC engine. There's no a system out there by any other company that would enable artificial intelligence to do these in a efficient way. That's one part of the goal of SenseStar is to be able to define components through artificial intelligence. Number 2 is read the points, what the points are, what the points mean, and get it to communicate with artificial intelligence. Yes, I do see it as a stepping stone, and this will enable us to get to that level so that we can have AI in our buildings.
Interestingly enough, while we're talking, I Googled edge controller just to see how readily how the inroads it's making to the different industries, and it's curious that we're not the only industry that uses edge controllers. All the financial institutions use them, but I don't think we'll see that in our specifications for a while, where they'll say specify that all the air handlers or all the types of equipment will be given an edge device, but it's a great concept. I think you guys are doing a lot of great work and leading the way. Like Eric said, you were the first one out of the chute that came up with a defined edge controller for applications. Not that. So let's take it to the next level here, Alper, and see what your product looks like. Can you give us a demo?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I heard 2 states are working on a legislation to have analytics capability in the controller for rooftop units.
Cool.
Nice.
I don't know if it has passed. I just heard it, but I will keep you updated on it.
Kenny, I'm wondering if every control company that has a DDC product line is not going to have an edge controller as part of their offering, so that where you'll have your air handling unit controller, whatever, but critical things you'll have your edge. It'll be edge. Able to do the edge type stuff.
I agree with you. I think because there's a company out there called Edge Products, and they make programmers for intakes, exhaust, gas and diesel applications. So, but I think the whole concept of putting that smarts out there at the most critical, reduced IO, whatever you need exactly. Instead of we're so used to building something that has 8 in, 8 out, or whatever, and then even if you only have 3 in, 3 out, or whatever, you have you can't scale it to exactly your application. So one day there will be edge controllers that are designed for specific equipment made by people like BASSG or it's the major manufacturers. But I think the concept's coming.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, Kenny, along those lines, and Alfred chime in on this, is, we talked about Sedona is a truly open programming language. Alfred, we know you use it. Mike Marsh and the boys at EasyIO use it. And it seems like everything else, the programming language is sort of specific to that control line. Do you ever see, would it be, you mentioned we can't do it now because there's not a software that's conducive to artificial intelligence making the changes. Would Sedona be that language? Could we, in theory, see a day where everybody goes, well, we've got BACnet as an open protocol, we got Haystack as an open tagging standard, and now the programming language in the controllers needs to be something like Sedona so that we can take advantage of all these things?
But that is part of the roadmap of SandStar. And
right.
it is part of the roadmap, and
cool.
that's one of the goals that we are trying to achieve.
Well, good. So can you show it to us? Can you show us?
Yeah, absolutely.
The SandStar?
I'm ready for that. So,
right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Get your popcorn, get your Cokes, put the kids to bed. Alfred's going to show us something magical.
All right. So before I start in full, I'm just going to share my screen. And before we go a little bit more directly into the application, I want to explain what you're going to see a little bit so that everyone can understand it. Oncolabs is basically, we're creating the SandStar in order to liberate data. And there's basically global trends that's driving the building automation industry. This is all open on Oncolabs. We made our roadmap completely open to the web. And this is industries in a transition mode to be data-centric. And it's all about data. And our goal is to create a device operating system. I'm just going to go quickly about this because everyone can read it through just logging on to the Oncolabs website. And this is basically the architecture that we are creating for within the SandStar. So the SandStar part is the data engine. It's the Haystack semantic data model, and it's the Sedona framework that is built into it. So these three parts are what makes up SandStar. And the goal is to basically simplify the workflows that are needed on the northbound of the applications. Meaning that when you need to read data from a controller, it can be either your DDC code or it can be your analytics within SkySpark or any other application. It can be your visualization. We are abstracting everything by using the Sedona tag, the Haystack tags. Okay, so with this introduction, I can just go into the demo. What I will do first is I will go into a EAC device. It's on port IP address 10.10.20.6, and I will go to EAC demo, and I will open a program called Record Editor. Within the Record Editor, this is basically what we are doing is we are defining the ports on a controller. And by utilizing Haystack tags. And I will show you the long way of doing things so that everyone can understand what this means. And we're going to go into the application. I'm just going to look for zone temp really quick. And there's a zone temperature here. I'm just going to delete this. This part is the SandStar part. I will go offline mode and I will delete the zone temperature here as well. And we will generate a new zone temperature together. Okay. So I'm going to scroll down and go to add channel. So add channel is basically an abstraction for hardware level items. And we have a channel number. What a channel number is, if I go to EAC config and a device template, this is basically the abstraction that we have within the application here. So an input 1 is channel number 4, and this is our system calls to the device. And what I can do is I can go zone temp, and I can add channel number 4 here. I can hit accept. I will go to zone temperature, and we will start the process from here. So basically, this device template is only utilized for abstracting the hardware to the engine, to the SandStar engine, which will be open source. I will hit save. Now it is asking us a question of kind. Our kind, because it's a zone temperature, our kind would be a number. Because it is a zone temperature, it would be analog and input. I will hit save. Now, the next part is that we have what we call these are compound markers. And as you add different tags, the next suggestion comes from a graph network, which is also open source, that will tell us what we would have next. So from an analog input, it will ask for unit, and unit will be something wherever you live. We're living in the United States, so it will be Fahrenheit. We hit accept. And now it's asking us the sensor. We defined the port. Now it's asking us the sensor's thermistor type. And as soon as I add this, we're getting to the third level of compound tags. Now it's asking us for offset. So once I hit save to this, I can either enter these one by one, or we have a library that's already defined for 10K sensor, and we have Fahrenheit and Celsius. We need the Fahrenheit one. This is basically the linear conversion curve for reading from ohm to a curve value. So we add these tags. There are a couple more tags that needs to be added, and this is basically here. One of them is row and cur. This means that there's a row data coming in from GPIO, and I need to convert it to a cur data. I need to have the enable tag. And also there's something called Sedona type and Sedona ID that I need to expose it out. I will add those tags here as well. Now my definition of the point is complete, and this is saved to an offline database within the database of SkySpark. But I still need to define where this is installed, what this is. This is basically the haystack tags that we normally use in a daily basis. I'm going to add zone air temp sensor, and we are going to create a placeholder to know how I'm going to search this within my next steps. And this is basically searching these 4 tags, 4 markers in this whole record. We have like around 25 different tags here. So trying to search these 4 is really difficult, so that we are adding a point query tag so we can find it easier. And as soon as you do that, you see it right here as a zone temp, and you have air zone temp sensor. Now, this is in the database. I'm going to upload this to our SandStar engine. I'm going to zone temp, and I will add this as save. What save does is it adds it to the memory, commits it to the file system. Restart SandStar will restart the database. Now we are done adding the system, adding a record to the engine, and we can go into a Sedona application editor, which we will be exposing it into the browser. That's one of our roadmaps. And what I will do is I will delete this input, I'm going to drag and drop the input, and I will go into point query, and I will put zone, air, temp, and sensor. Pretty much any BMS nowadays basically is hard-coded to an input. What you're seeing now is that my room is getting a little bit warm. It's 77 degrees, and the analog input exists if these markers are within the database of the Senstar engine. It gives us the channel number. If it finds more than one, then our query is not good because it has to be unique. And it gives us the kernel of the data. What does this do for us is it enables us to go into the next level of things where we can actually have code. I will show you a cool stage code. In here, we have a cool command. It's checking this record count component is checking how many cool and command tags, how many cool and command records with these two tags exists within the engine. This is the metamorphism part that comes in. By looking at metadata, we are morphing the Sedona logic. What we are doing is we are enabling the loop function because that record does exist. And it also has 4 channels. So our number of outputs for a linear sequencer is 4. And our commands for outputs are basically entered here. So the envision is that we will have a VAV controller or a rooftop unit controller with all potential points, inputs and outputs are already coded in the Sedona engine. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't hurt the Sedona part. We actually stop cycling that folder if it's not there. So the example of that would be, we were doing a demo of a chiller plant. So if there's a secondary pump, you basically don't have a secondary marker within the engine, and you basically disable the loop, you disable the folder from cycling, and you don't have any inputs. Number of outputs are not available, and your secondary chilled water pump channel is 0. It just doesn't exist. So this is the Senstar engine with haystack tags, defining it with haystack tags, and installing it to the engine. Also, one of the main benefit is that you basically have haystack. You have all your points exposed here via haystack, and artificial intelligence or graphics or any other part can basically read this and consume it and create the next part of the value-added chain, or devices can talk to each other as well. So this is what Senstar is.
Awesome.
Very cool. Very, very, very cool. Kenny, I mean, what sort of ramifications do you see with this?
Well, I think the name of the game is that, well, first of all, let me say there's a lot of work being done here that Alper's making look kind of easy. There's a lot of heavy lifting that went into this. And then, we all know that SkySpark is a great analytic tool, but you need to have people that are skilled. You need somebody that's very good at providing that programming language that we just saw there, Ed. But I think once, as we know, once this semantics and these templatings get imposed into a database, we're going to see efficiencies, unprecedented efficiencies, and unprecedented, opportunities for adding value. I mean, if you take this and you keep elaborating on all this capability, we are going to bring our buildings under control. We are going to save a great deal of money, and we're able to document it and archive it in a very, very, standard, repeatable way that'll become an industry standard. So I see this as an evolving, technology. It's really cool to hear it from the ground level.
Yeah, I want to hop back, Kenny, when you and I first sort of got onto this, and I remember hearing Daryl Smith, who ran Microsoft's campus, speak. This was 7 or 8 years ago. And folks, one of the big differentiators here is this allows you to do something called fault detection versus just alarms. And I think alarming in our industry, in other words, the system sends out an alarm has gotten to the point that people have gotten numb to alarms. Now, people are addressing this in different ways. Scott Cochran's Cochrane Supply has a cool app that sort of allows you to turn those on and off or
The Raven.
manage the alarms. Yeah, right, the Raven. But fault detection, basically, so an alarm would be if the temperature gets too high, for example, send an alarm out. Our temperature's too high. Okay, when Daryl Smith gave the example, he said they had no alarms at all. Their systems were so great that, they never got alarms. And it was only when they went in and fault detection, Albert, I'm going to let you sort of hop in here in a second and explain it probably better than me. But fault detection basically says you look at variables, okay, and you say if this and this is happening, then we have a problem. So in Microsoft's case, they put one of these type overlays on, and what they discovered through their fault detection process was the reason their energy bills were so high and the reasons they were not getting any alarms was their heating and cooling was running at the same time. It was fighting each other. Made for great temperature, but made for very, very large energy bills. So fault detection is sort of at the heart of this, right? I mean, if you can all of a sudden begin to look at relationships, it allows you to do predictive maintenance and everything else. But Albert, hop in on that and flesh out what I didn't get.
Within the analytics, analytics is can be done different. It's a big topic, actually. You can do analytics on historical data. You can do predictive analytics, looking at future, trying to predict the future. And there's the historical data version. You can do pattern analytics. Forward-looking, you can try to utilize artificial intelligence. What this will allow here is that we will be able to do KPIs with the utilization of analytics, because we have this tagging model. I could actually just add here the type of sensor. We could come up with a system called model, and it could be maybe ACI thermostat, and we could add the version, we could have the serial number, and we could actually combine all these even to the sensor level and come up with the analytics results for very granularly. Right now, we don't have the data exposed out in this granular way. That's why we cannot get to the next level to do artificial intelligence.
Got you. And I don't know whether you caught our interview with this guy about 2 years ago, Dr. Igor Mezic, Alper, but he was a guy who had an algorithm, a self-learning algorithm. And he was basically saying with a building, you could basically just, like you said, you could create a group of sensors or whatever, like you just said, and then the algorithm would determine the relationships. Instead of somebody having to write the rules or figure out the correlations, the algorithm would just watch how the data interacted and then would come up with the optimal sort of variables. Now, we haven't heard from Dr. Mezic in a while, so I don't know whether that ever came to fruition.
Ecorhythm did well, but I think what happened was they didn't have the scale to go any bigger. I knew they were very busy in New York City, and they were very successful at one point. But see, Albert, I think what the problem is that with the people that we work with in the Controltrends community is that when you go too fast, you lose people with the actual effect. I mean, it's almost like Eric always says, you have to filter it out. There's too much data overwhelms people, and they get into a point where they no longer can relate to it or want to. So I think the things that you're doing here is by you putting all this stuff into the engines, and then we in the sales engineering departments sell the concepts, and then we create the efficiencies, and we enable small buildings especially to become very efficient, because as we all know, there's a market out there where 80% of our commercial buildings 100,000 feet and below have nothing more than thermostatic control. And it's a disastrous, when you think about the energy that's being wasted, and you think about the solutions that are there, we just got to keep pushing, driving. Everybody in their own realm has to drive the information home to the relevant people that make the decisions. So
right. Yeah, Kenny, where I was sort of going with this, it seems like what Alper's platform would allow something like our Dr. Messick's algorithm to work. In other words, it allows the information to be collected in a way that something like an algorithm could be put on top of that to work. Is that accurate, Alper?
Yes. So one of the next goals that we have is when we added the point from here to the same IP address to the SendStar engine, it basically added the point definition onto the engine. The next thing that we will do is we will have a REST API call where we can add the logic, add the component of the Sedona, also link a component to Sedona. For the industry to look at it, there's an artificial intelligence reinforcement learning playing Mario game located on the web. Instead of playing the Mario game, the artificial intelligence will play the Sedona haystack game, nice. And it will improve upon that. It's as simple as that. So we just didn't have the platform to achieve that. I think this is the closest way, and I do need help from programmers. I do need help from small controls manufacturers to join into this momentum that we are trying to create, so that we would have portable DDC code. It's open. We need to secure it a little bit more, but where we can actually take it to the next level.
All right. Well, go ahead.
I just wanted to clean up the algorithm. They're still doing very well, and that whole concept Dr. Messick came up with is they basically used they diagnose issues before they arise, but it was developed to optimize engine performance for the jet industry, jet aircraft. In it's an amazing concept. But to your point, Eric, I didn't try to stray off the subject. I'm just trying to think of how something that has this much potential, how does it become productized? How do you market it? And how do you sell it? Like Alper said, there's a demand for more. There's so much room in this industry to become champions of your own aspect of the industry and go after certain applications and really deliver the edge products that we're talking loaded with this product SandStar. So I mean,
well, but I think this is the bane of anybody that's in technology right now is finding something like this. And I say, okay, that Alper is a reincarnation of Nikola Tesla, and Tesla is back, not the car guy, but he's the Tesla and the controls thing. And I say that Alper is, but what I'm getting at is, I think to be successful, whether it's this industry or any industry regarding technology, is you got to recognize a rising star, and you got to sort of hit your wagon to it. And Alper, what I'm hearing you say is, hey, you know what? I got these ideas and these concepts. I know how this works. I need somebody to help me build this and take it to the next level to scale it.
That is correct. And we have to do it as an industry as a whole for the benefit of the industry. And not worry about it will be hard for not to worry about existing channel and existing market that individual controls manufacturers have. But if we can achieve this, this market will grow bigger, faster, and it will lead to many good things where we could actually monetize from.
Exactly, and that's Eric's favorite word, co-opetition. Because instead of beating each other to death and trying to steal somebody else's piece of pie,
let's just make a bigger pie, right?
Make the pie gigantic, right. Make it a global pie, and solve problems at the same time, and get young, inspired people. The Young Gun program that we worked with, and I want to compliment you again there, Alpers. Ken St. Clair probably really turned us on to your background, because you were one of the first energy Young Guns, and tell us about your experience. How did you get in this business, by the way? How did you get started with, what made you make the left and rights to come in through the door and start doing what you're doing?
This is kind of a passion for me overall, and it was a coincidence. My cousin was working for Allerton, and I got into the industry along with him. I started doing some middles O&M manuals, then started doing graphics. Then I taught myself how to do 3D graphics. Everyone knows me as BAS Graphics. And then we did stencils, little Lego-like graphics, then hired Java programmer. We wrote Template Mavi. Then from Template Mavi, I became SkySpark distributor. We wrote a bunch of other apps. Here I am, and this is a passion for me because I had thyroid cancer when I was 15 and found out that the engineers said it would be fun to override the emergency override. And from that, controls is basically a part of my life, and I want to make it right.
Cool.
Very, very cool. Well, listen, Albert, we got somebody texting in because, as you know, we're blasting this out live. This is from Angie J. And Angie wants to know, she says, can we get a little personal here? Angie wants to know if you're single and what you like to do for fun.
I'm married. I have a 5-year-older. Lately, I have not been doing anything.
Angie just texted a smiley face upside down. So, okay. So what do you like to do for fun?
The only time that I have is trade shows. Pretty much, you will see me with a beer in my hand at the trade shows and at the events. That's the only downtime that I get overall.
So I guess we'll be seeing you at the Niagara Summit here in April.
Niagara Summit, Realcomm, CX Energy.
Yeah, you get around. Well done, Albert.
So this is the Visualitic. We were talking about the connecting the haystack with the buildings.
No, Albert, you had something else. Excuse me for the interruption, but you had 3D you mentioned, and you also have 4D analytics. You're the first person I've heard use that term. Maybe is that going in? Is that, don't you have a product that uses 4D?
Oh yeah. So this is kind of 4D analytics, and what you're seeing here is individual VAVs, and this is within Visualitic, and we are consuming the data with haystack tags, and you can basically play back the data right on the graphic. You can actually have the whole building of VAVs in actually a 3D model way, and this is basically kind of a show, but this is what Visualitic is about. You visually analyzing the graphics on the screen.
Awesome.
Very cool.
This is I wanted to do a small demo about the way we created the zone temperature. And this is going to be Controltrends demo. I've been doing a lot of demos. This will be very simple and short, and just to get the concepts out for listeners. So I'm opening up the zone temperature. We will drag and drop the gauge. We'll drag and drop the zone temp status, best matching markers to widget. So we're looking at the record. This is all the tags on the record. We are doing the reverse of what we did within the record editor. So this is zone air temp sensor, hit next, hit value, accept. And now this is doing block programming. The block programming, what it does is it creates a REST API call to Haystack and parses the file and puts it to the gauge. So there you go. We just have it linked to the point. We can also do we can also add it as to a super widget. We have basically a single row object, and within the single row object we have all the logic in there that is necessary to be able to get the nav name and the value. So again, we are utilizing Haystack for relative mapping. We are doing zone temp ID and linking that. Now that is already linked. I know within the single row, we already have these parts of the logic. I'm going to link it to record, to an ID, and we'll hit save, go preview, and you'll see the zone temperature status, the zone temp that was generated within the Haystack. So basically the Haystack becomes abstraction layer for DDC, graphics, analytics, artificial intelligence. Anyway.
Very cool. Very cool, Albert. Awesome. All right, man. I'm sort of wowed, Mr. Tesla. That's great stuff. And so, how can our community get hold of you?
They can email me, alper@bassg.com. They can go to bassg.com, oncollabs.com. I would love them to join at project-haystack.org, has a working group called SendStar. Join there. We are defining we have defined tags, but us defining tags is not enough. We want controls manufacturers to join to the SendStar working group to define these tags so that we can standardize all these tags for controls as well, where it will be the whole control, the programming, defining the points will be tag based as well. So that's
we see progress being made. We applaud your efforts. We saw recently there was a post where ASHRAE, Project Haystack, and another company joined forces to further promulgate haystack tagging, and that was a major.
That is for the networking side. This is for the hardware definition side. So yeah, it is great that in every level that haystack is entering into the market.
Right, because March 2nd, we had a post where ASHRAE's BACnet Committee, Project Haystack, and Brick Schema collaborate to provide unified data semantic modeling solutions. And I just see that it's good stuff, Alper.
Yeah, this is the working group that is on Project Haystack, invitation to Project Haystack working group. If you go
we'll put that post on there. We'll put that link on there.
And tell them Alper sent you, right?
Yeah, Alper, good job. Because what we'll do is we'll put this in the post, so that link will go right to the invitation to Project SendStar working group.
That's great.
Very, very cool. Well, listen, buddy, we will see you, and the rest of the Controltrends community can see you next, appearing in New Orleans at the Niagara Summit. So we'll look forward to seeing you there, buddy. Thanks for taking time, and thanks for showing us stuff, and keep up the great work, Alper.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Kenny, just blown away by Alper as usual. So there you go, folks. That's another week on Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. And again, special thanks to Alper, and we will see you next week. Until then, remember, be bold, stay in control, and stay relevant.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers. And that's right.